My name is Quinta Mbori, and I like to describe myself as Queen of all trades, a gender equality advocate, and I use every opportunity I have in my influence. I use my networks to give a voice to issues that affect women and gender at large. I'm also a senior editor at Standard Group. I've done this for a while. And one thing that I would like to state is even as an editor, I've also noticed the way women stories are treated, the way women issues are treated. My vision for the world is a just and equal world where everybody is given equal opportunity based on their capability, not favoring one gender over the other. So yes, I'm very grateful that God gave me the opportunity, the honor to be their parents, and I'm doing everything possible to make their futures bright, to empower them, and to ensure that when they're out there, they also treat people kindly and justly. I'm also a stepmom to a very smart girl who is in campus, and it's just been a lovely experience, learning, growing with her, and also trying to extend what I have and what I've learned with such a brilliant young girl. Many people actually, I get a lot of questions. People want to know how I ended up being the president of Standard Group Women Network. The truth of the matter is that I was nominated. At the launch of Standard Group Women Network, one of our core agenda was to improve coverage of news to ensure that it is balanced. Gender equality is a big one. It's a big one in media. It is a real issue. And whether we like it or not, the fact that we are not portraying women correctly, we are not selling the right narrative, we can see what is happening in the society. So when we came up with the issue of trying to narrow the gap, the gender gap, we came up with a TV show. And this is why. Because we believe that media plays a lot in terms of shaping what is happening in the community out there. Therefore, we have these platforms. We are a media organization. We cannot run away from that. So as a network, we figured out that this would actually be one of the most impactful ways of expressing what we wanted to say about gender equality. So the show, the agenda of the show actually is to empower women, to showcase women as leaders, to showcase women as people who are successful in the society, and not what we have seen happening in the past. Because in media, anytime a woman makes it to the front page, and if it is a big story, you can take this to the bank, is when they're involved in a scandal, they're involved in corruption, or somebody has lost their life. We have cases of femicide. These are the few instances where we will have women making it to the front pages and making it to news headlines, which is unfortunate. Because does that mean that women are not born leaders? Women do not receive appointments. Women do not impact communities in different ways. They are not having influence in science and technology. So the idea of the show was to try and change this narrative. I want my daughter to watch the show and see herself in the stories of women that we showcase. Just recently, we have seen what's happening in media. It is because the information we give out there is that successful women are ones who have probably injected something in their body so that they look a certain way. And these are the women who our children are looking at. So I think we will have failed as a media organization if we do not use our platforms to transform this perception about women, to change the stereotypes against women. If you ask me, I think having this show, especially for a media organization, means it is the right thing to do. It is the right thing to do. Gender equality is a human rights issue for both men and women, not just women alone. Welcome to Her Standards, the show that sets the tone for gender equality and women empowerment. We are at the 4 Points by Sheraton, Nairobi Airport. This is Africa's leading airport hotel. International Women's Day is celebrated in many countries around the world. It is a day when women are recognized for their achievements without regard to divisions, whether national, ethnic, linguistic, cultural, economic, or political. The day, collectively founded by women, also brings attention to gender parity and women's rights. Significant activity is witnessed worldwide as groups come together to celebrate women's achievements or rally for women's equality. International Women's Day has occurred for well over a century, with the first gathering held in 1911. The global celebration of International Women's Day is a time for reflection of how far women have come, advocacy for what is still needed, and action to continue breaking down barriers. With over a century of wisdom, International Women's Day is a growing movement centered on unity and strength. Every year, there is a different theme dependent on the agenda. The International Women's Day theme for 2021 is Choose to Challenge, which highlights the importance of challenging biases and misconceptions in the interest of creating a more inclusive and gender equal world. The United Nations also issued a 2021 theme, Women in Leadership, Achieving an Equal Future in a COVID-19 World. The United Nations 2021 theme celebrates efforts from girls and women in creating a more equal future and COVID-19 pandemic recovery. Today, we discuss women in leadership. Every year on 8th of March, the world marks International Women's Day to celebrate women's achievement and acts of courage. Welcome to Her Standards, the show that sets exceedingly high standards for women. My name is Queen Tambori, but my friends call me Queen. On today's episode, I'm joined by 3 phenomenal women in leadership. Welcome to the show, women.
Thank you.
We celebrate you today. We are very excited to have you on this auspicious occasion. So in that spirit of celebration, I'm going to do something that we normally don't do. I will allow you to introduce yourself. Tell us what you do, what you love doing, what makes you wake up in the morning, what inspires you, and what you feel, it's been 1 year since we celebrated the previous International Women's Day. So I'm going to start from my extreme right. Yes, Carol.
Thank you, Queen, and good afternoon, everybody. My name is Carol Agengo, and I'm the Regional Director, Helpage International in Africa. I wear many hats. I'm a lawyer, I'm a mother, I'm a grandmother, I'm a friend, and what makes me tick is the hope that women can have a better future. And I'm excited at the successes that women have made over the past so many years. 2020 was a rough year, but I think there are stories of courage from women across the world. And I hope that I'll be able to share some of the stories of older women who've been courageous in the face of adversity that has not been seen before. So I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, welcome to the show. We are very excited to have you. Next to Carol, we have another amazing woman. Please tell us what you do.
Happy International Women's Day. My name is Mercy Jelimo and I work with the Center for Rights, Education and Awareness, a national feminist organization that works to build the agency and the agency of women and help women claim and enjoy their rights. We do this by focusing on 4 areas. One is that we work with women in leadership. We just try to promote women's leadership capacity. We also work in areas such as trying to end gender-based violence and also support survivors of GBV. Thirdly, we also focus on just building the capacity of women to be able to also enjoy their sexual and reproductive rights. And lastly, we focus on economic empowerment initiatives, just trying to empower women economically. What drives me is just to see women, enjoy and claim these rights and live and realize their full potential. I think that's what makes me wake up every single day, just to try and see that the women live in an equal world, that the women are able to enjoy these rights. And last year, 2020, really showed us that really women can be leaders. You see, all the countries that had women leaders were able to really respond well to the COVID pandemic. So this really motivates me in my work when I try to just ensure that women are in leadership position and that the environment is also conducive for women leaders. I'm so happy to be here and ready to have this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mercy. It really makes the two of us. I also wake up when I think about creating an equal world for women.
Right.
I have no reason to stay in bed.
Yes.
Feel welcome.
Thank you
We
so
celebrate
much.
you today.
Thank you.
Next, we have another amazing lady. Yes, please introduce yourself.
Thank you very much, and I'm so honored to be sitting here among you lovely women. Happy International Women's Day to you. My name is Diana Sifuna. I'm the CEO of Jonathan Jackson Foundation, an organization that deals with 3 pillars. Number 1, we deal with humanitarian aid support for those who are greatly affected with the COVID-19 pandemic, especially economically. The second pillar we deal with is the sports pillar. We recently, in 2019, bought the Nairobi City Stars Football Club, which is being managed by the foundation. We also deal with a program that brings basketball to the communities, and this is through our program called Bake Mtaani. The third pillar, which is the most important pillar, which is the foundation of our foundation, is the economic empowerment for the women and youth, and especially the vulnerable in the community. Our work greatly has been in the Nairobi County. Now, I wear many hats as well, and I am a daughter, I am a sister, I am a friend to many people. I also started a podcast in 2020, just on the onset of the pandemic, which is called Diversity with Diana. Diversity with Diana is like a groundbreaking platform that brings the voices of young people to advocate for good governance. We also advocate for inclusive diversity. This is where we want to see women in leadership, but among those women, we want to see young women in leadership as well. And finally, we actually advocate for tech innovation. So the world is going digital, the world is going, the world is becoming a smaller place through the global digital interventions or the platforms that are there. So we're having meetings today with people who are miles away, where we used to fly to have meetings in different places. We're making policies remotely. We are having judgments being done, law being served to the people using the digital platform. So tech innovation is one thing that we like to advocate for at the Diversity with Diana podcast. And I'm actually hoping that all the 3 ladies with me in this panel will be invited one time so that we can speak more about these issues. Thank you very much.
Exactly. One thing about COVID is that we saw the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't really come as a surprise that International Women's Day decided to pick on a theme on women and leadership, and how they're striving to achieve equality in a COVID-19 era. But before we get to breaking down the theme of this year's International Women's Day, one thing that really people are struggling with is the idea of leadership, particularly women in leadership. When you talk about a woman in leadership, people try to imagine that this is somebody who sits somewhere at a posh corner office, sports a nice looking suit like the one Diana is wearing. You know, they drive a certain kind of car, they lead a certain lifestyle. But then based on your experience, because I realize that most of you are actually making a lot of impact in the society in different arenas, in different fields.
Right.
What is your understanding of leadership? Because we need to break this down. Mercy,
Should
you
I
can
go
go ahead.
first?
Yes, you can go
Thank
first.
you.
Yes.
I think when we have the conversation about leadership, many at times we tend to narrow the discussion to just be about women versus men. But I think it's important for us to broaden that the discussion around leadership is not just about women versus men. It's a discussion about diversity, it's a discussion about inclusion, it's a discussion about equity and equality. So for me, that's when the word leadership is thrown to me, or when I hear the word leadership, is how diverse are we in everything that we do, be it in the political space, economic space, social space. How diverse are these groupings? How inclusive are they? Are we able to take the voices of every one of us, are the perspectives of each and every one of us? Because we all are in this, all of us are in this world, all of us are in this country. So there is, certain unique perspectives and uniqueness to say, for instance, to me, that I need to bring to the table, and that it needs also to be accounted and factored in all the decisions that are being made, because ultimately most of these decisions are going to affect me. Yeah. So it is important that, we are included in these discussions, we are factored in these discussions, we are planned for in this discussion, we are supposed to be prioritized in this discussion. So for me, when I hear the word leadership, that's what I think about: diversity, inclusion, equality, and equity. And it boils down to the rights that all of us have, these fundamental rights to be in places, to be heard, to say our voice, to speak, to say something. So that's to me is what leadership is about. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you, Mercy. And as you were just talking about diversity, something came to mind. I'm just trying to imagine a housewife probably seated somewhere in the living room watching our show. And they are trying to figure out the fact that they're not employed. Do they still qualify to be called leaders?
Absolutely.
Yes. Carol, you want to take that?
Yes, I think leadership, we need to demystify the word leadership. And as Mercy has said, oftentimes when you speak about leadership, we think about primarily political leadership. But we have leadership in various, actually every aspect of our life calls for some level of leadership. And so we need to break down leadership and translate it into the various spheres of life that we're engaging in. So to come to your question, that housewife sitting at home is a leader. Absolutely. Because she's taking care of that little nation that is her house.
Yes.
She's taking care of the issues that happen in that house that are possibly very unique to her. But she has to be able to manage them in a way that her family is able to survive, her family is able to thrive, and that calls for leadership. But the other thing that I want to bring to the fore is that when we talk about leadership, we also need to think about the underlying issues, not just the person who sits at the leadership, quote unquote, the role that we see as the leader. We need to think about the voice and the agency of the people who influence how that position is framed. We need to think about the voice and the agency of the people who the leader serves, because the leader is not a leader in a vacuum. So to what extent are the people that they're leading participating and informing the decisions that they make? And we also need to speak about leadership from the perspective of decision making, yes, but we also need to speak about it from the perspective of responsibility. Because when a leader sits in a leadership, in that role, in that position, then he or she takes a position of responsibility over certain issues and over certain people. And therefore, you must include those people in those decisions, because you're not leading in a vacuum.
Exactly.
So we must think about the participation of women in leadership from the point of actual leadership, but also influencing the leaders. And when we speak about the participation of women, as we think about International Women's Day, then we have to think about their participation in the real sense, so that we kind of level the playing ground, as Mercy has spoken to somewhat, that we level the playground so that their participation in that process is actually not token participation, but it is meaningful participation. And we have to ensure that the various categories, the vulnerable women are taken into account, the women with disabilities, older women are taken into account. And lastly, we also have to think about the role that the men play in ensuring that all these pieces come together.
Exactly. Yes, Diana, you have something to add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's lovely when you hear Mercy talk about inclusion and diversity and then you hear Carol talk about participation. I mean, they've said all the points that need to be said, but I would add that representation matters. So from that basic unit of command, being a family for the housewife who is home, to that head teacher for a high school who is a lady, to the principal in or a vice chancellor in a university, to the president and the governors that we have, representation matters. So in as much as we are all leaders, she has said it rightly, we need to have an enabling environment for you to thrive as a leader, to have that independence of making a decision as a leader, but also to see people who are in the decision-making processes be representative of who we are as a society. Exactly. And I know maybe I'm jumping the gun, but this is the International Women's Day.
It's fine.
So when I say that in the leadership, it would be good to see that same representation. If the population is 50% women or 50-something% women, then surely, shouldn't it be that we see that same reflection in the leadership when now it comes to governance? But I leave it back to you.
You know, as you were saying that, worldwide, you only have 21 women who are heads of states, unfortunately.
Out of 190.
Yes, and you know what COVID taught us is that these women are actually doing an amazing job in managing the situations in their country. So in terms of performance, it is not questionable because we have statistics all over the place telling us that organizations and countries that are managed by women are actually doing very well.
Right.
Which begs the question, so where is the problem? Why don't we have proper representation? What are some of the barriers that women are dealing with that are stopping them from, you know, taking up these positions, influencing? What do we need to do? What can we do as women in order to uplift one another, to take up these spaces of influence? I see, as I was talking, Carol was really following, yes.
Maybe I'll start by saying that we have to be conscious of the fact that women are facing up to structures that have not facilitated their rise to the top. And this is at the very personal level and at the political levels and everything else in between. At the economic level, if we look at education, I don't have the statistics off the top of my head, but right now it is true. There's an increased number of girls who are accessing education. But if we look back historically, access to education was a difficult thing for women.
Yes, it was.
And that is why then we celebrated the women who became, who went through school and became professors, etc. Now, I'm sure if we went around the room, each of us can name a couple of women professors off the top of our heads.
Yes.
But this was not there before. So we also have to deal with the historical, I'll call them injustices, that then prevented women from accessing leadership at various levels. If we look at the political, you've said it, that 21 women in out of 190 something
above,
countries are women. So we know that it is a problem not only in Kenya, it's a problem across the world. So we need to dismantle some of these structures that have prevented women. And so what are the foundations of this structure? They're the economic issues, they're the cultural issues, they're the what do you call it, education, which
Yeah.
ties down with economic. And this then gets reflected in the laws. This gets reflected in the practice.
In media, yeah.
So it's a whole, it's not a simple thing. It's very complex, and we've been chipping at it bit by bit, and there's been amazing progress. But if you look recently, the WTO chair, if you look at the media coverage of that, and today I introduced myself as a grandmother in honor of that amazing woman who made it to the top. And unfortunately, the only thing that the media was able to pick out was that she was a grandmother. And there's nothing wrong with that, which it's also an action of ageism, so as to bring down the very valuable and powerful things that Ngozi will bring to that position. Exactly. So we also need to address some of the issues such as ageism, the discrimination, the violence that women face when they go into the political field. In Kenya, we remember very sadly the horrible things that have happened to women who have sought political power. And those are things that we need to address deliberately. Not only wait for 2022, for example, so that we address them. We need to address them in the laws and in the practice, so that violence against women becomes an issue that is unacceptable, because we've seen that it is reflected even when women get into positions of leadership and power. So we have to dismantle the structures, because underlying these structures are very deep-seated policies, very deep-seated issues that then influence the policies that are supposed to facilitate the participation of women in leadership.
Very well put. We have to dismantle the structures. And I was just looking at Diana and wondering, you know, from a personal point of view, it's going to take a whole generation to clear this. Actually, statistics say we need about 200 years to arrive at generation equality, but I don't think we have that time. So Diana, what do you think that we can do as individual women who are privileged to hold positions of influence and power? What is it that we can do that to fast track this process? Yeah, because I don't think, do we have 200 years to wait?
No, we don't have actually 200 years, and Mercy has said it, she was just trying to whisper it. It's actually 100 years.
It's 100?
And, and I think that statistic came from a country like Sweden that deliberately put efforts in place to get rid of corruption. And it took them 100 years to actually say that now Sweden is a corrupt-free zone.
Yes.
I would say start from where you are. And just picking up from what Carol has said, these historical injustices have put women at a disadvantaged position. Therefore, we are not starting from equal ground. In as much as, you know, when guys hear us talk about diversity and whatever, they're like, no, but that is tokenism. You are awarding women positions so that they can feel like they're being included, but they're not qualified to do the job. Of course, the fact that women can now access education from a young age means that we are raising a generation that will be able to compete from the same level ground. I hold the opinion that certain critical positions must have meritocracy as a principle. Therefore, we are not begging as women to be put in positions just for the decoration purposes. But guess what? We actually have capacity to lead at this point. Ageism, whether it is discrimination against the older people or the younger people, should just be put to the back. When you work with Western-owned companies, they don't look at your age, they don't look at your gender. They look at your capacity to deliver the tasks that are at hand. So therefore, they don't look to tokenize you. They actually look for you to deliver on the tasks that are at hand. I would say for us as ambassadors, we need to start from where we are. For example, institutionalize things like gender representation. In Kenya, we have tried to do that through the two-thirds gender rule. We wanted to have it in the system and require that for every person for every representation for public leadership. If the public voting system does not get enough representation for women, then the women must be included in that. And I know others have seen it as a challenge. And we've still seen even the cabinet, the president seems to be also having issues with it. Although we know that he has also tried a lot to have to support women through the ending of GBV and the FGM. He has been a good advocate for that, and even he has tried for youth. But trying is not enough. We need more. This is the time to act. The platforms are there. We don't have to see you fly to a different country in the West to ask for resources for this. Let us start doing good from home. Let us start from where we are. And for young people, just join us. Go on your accounts and walk the talk as well. It's not good to just tweet about things and say fancy things, but you're not walking the talk.
Exactly.
Yes.
If you're just joining us, welcome to Her Standards. This is the show for women, by women, and we give women an opportunity to discuss issues objectively. Today we are talking about women and leadership, which is the International Women's Day 2021 thematic area. If you want to join us in this conversation, you can hit us up on our social media platforms at KTN Home, on Facebook and Twitter. You can also hit me up directly at Queenie Saina on Twitter or Queenie Mbori on Facebook and Instagram. I'm joined by an amazing panel of women, and we are discussing issues. Do not go away. When we come back, we're going to look at the impact of COVID-19 on women and what women can do in order to achieve an equal life post-COVID-19. Don't go away.